Hello, everyone. It's Bradford Speaks back again for the next episode of the Everything Matters podcast. My special guest today is going to be a young lady by the name of Wendy Huffman. Wendy's a California girl. She has a very interesting background, ranging from interior design and being published in multiple interior design magazines to developing and designing sets for Hollywood. Wendy's also a business executive coach and the CEO and founder of Making the Difference, which is a nonprofit organization that is super engaged with bringing life transformative work to places such as Kenya and Africa. They provide internet services and education resources to refugees who came to find nowhere else to go. Wendy's an inspiration to us all, and she's committed and dedicated to being the difference on our planet. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Wendy Huffman to the Everything Matters podcast. Let's get it popping. Hi, Wendy. How are you? Thanks for being on the Everything Matters podcast. Welcome to the show. How's everything going today?
It's going great. I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, really excited to have you as well. Really excited to hear about all the amazing things that you're up to. I gave you a brief introduction before we opened up here to give people some idea of just a few of the things that you're into, but I know there's so much more to know, so much more to learn. So we're excited to hear about the journey that you're on to really make a difference in the world. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So what's helpful for us to just to get an idea of who you are, right? You and I met maybe 6-7 months ago. And from the time I met you, I was like, I said to myself, this lady's up to something big. And you shared with me just a few things that you were up to. And I'm like, how in the world do you fit this all into your life? And, so busy, so many different balls that you're juggling to make a difference. So it's one of the things that really got me interested in having you on the show. Because I think there's a lot to be said about people who are up to big things and have really big and busy lives, right? How do you manage all of that? So I want to really get into some of that as well. But first of all, just to give people, again, a sense of who you are, I know that you grew up in Southern California, and I pride myself on having lived in Southern California for a few years. Love it out there. So give us an idea, Wendy, growing up in Southern California, and I know that now you're in Tennessee. So big transition there. Big culture shift, maybe even a little bit of culture shock, right? Who knows? So love to hear about what it was like for you growing up in Southern California, maybe family that you still have back there. And what was the transition like for you coming to Tennessee?
Well, I was raised in the San Fernando Valley. I was a Valley girl.
All right.
And, youngest of 5, but most everybody had moved out, by the time that I was, in junior high and high school. I was only child, basically. It was, we're just middle income, kind of average, I was on the drill team and, just like to be social, but
Just sounds like a pretty
not
super
a whole
simple.
lot to say.
Not a whole lot to say. Pretty simple life there. I like it. Very good.
Yes.
So what brought you to Tennessee from the West Coast?
Actually, I came by way of Buenos Aires.
Oh, okay.
But just looking for a place to settle and call home. And my mom was here.
Mm.
She was declining in health, and so I moved here to spend, her last years with her. And no regrets. And now I've got roots here. I really love Tennessee.
That's awesome. Very good. All right. You said something really interesting, Wendy, and I don't want to step over that. You said that you came to Tennessee via Buenos Aires. That's South America. So how did that transition come about? How did you end up going to South America? How long were you there? What were you doing there?
Well, actually, my partner Bill and I had actually, our first date was a self-development course, right?
Okay.
And we built our life around it. We loved like always taking courses that had you question. And one of these courses like asked what dreams had you given up on and challenged you to make one happen. And it was travel. And he had been a world traveler. I had always dreamed to travel, but never had the opportunity. And so we were trying to figure out like, how could we travel and live in LA? It was expensive. And we finally just decided to sell it all and go. And so we did it. And my kids were grown. We were just like, why are we even here? I wasn't in love with the job I had. There wasn't anything holding us. And so we sold everything in 2013. We lived in 7 countries.
Wow.
It was just an extraordinary experience. I just am so happy that I did that. And then in 2015, my kids called and said that my first husband had cancer. It was stage 4.
Wow.
And I had like a 10-minute conversation with Bill, and he said, I know your family needs you. And he bought a ticket for me to go home, and I took care of him until he passed.
Wow.
And then Bill had to keep traveling. There wasn't room for him, really, in a small house, managing all of that.
Right.
And he was like, darn, right? Sorry, I have to keep seeing the world.
Right.
But he was in Thailand at the time, and after everything was settled, he said, I can't wait for you to come. And I said, I can't. I have to go spend time with my mom.
Yeah.
Because she was declining. So my mom lived with my sister in Nashville. So I moved here.
Okay.
He came, we settled here. We bought a little condo and we put roots down. So,
Love it.
But he still loved to travel.
Love it. Wonderful story. Wonderful story. So, one of the things that really caught my attention in that, what you just shared, was you picked up, sold everything and moved to South America. That's a big deal. And I know that a lot of people, dream of doing things like that. Like people think, man, I want to live in a different country. I want to travel. Right. And it's always that consternation around, how do I do that? Like, what kind of work am I going to do? How am I going to, pay my bills and manage my life? So I'd love to hear what you did that was so creative and out of the box that allows you to be able to make such a large leap. Because obviously you have roots still back in California, right? Your family was still there. So how'd you make that happen?
Well, Bill was disabled, and that's another whole podcast in itself.
Got it.
But so he had disability income, which living in California, it needed 2 incomes, but in South America, you didn't, right?
Right.
So I actually took advantage of the opportunity. I mean, we were about maybe a month or 2, and I was like, I got to have goals. This is kind of fun. I love exploring, but it's just kind of like that. Like I'm wasting time, know? And so I went back to school and I got my degree while we traveled South America.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I graduated college in 2017 at how old was I? 2017, 58 years old.
Wow.
58.
Congratulations. You know what? You're never too old to learn, right? We say that all the time. And, it's better late than never.
Yes.
Better late than never.
It is. And I have no regrets. It was such a great experience. And actually, it was amazing how the courses correlated with where we were and what we were studying. Like when we went to Machu Picchu, I was studying anthropology.
Okay.
So it was like, it gave me the tools to actually understand what I was seeing, how not to judge it, and how to like really be there and be present with the extraordinary things that we got to experience. So,
wow.
Yeah, no regrets. That was it was a great decision.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I hope to maybe one day, potentially live abroad. So maybe you can give me some coaching on how to make that happen for myself. And I just want to let everybody know, Wendy, I think you can do it without a disability income, though that helps, right? Certainly helps to have that coming in for sure. So don't go get disabled, guys, so you can get the disability check. That's not. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, or Social Security. You can live really well on Social Security in a lot of countries.
Yes, indeed. That's beautiful. I love that story. Okay, so Wendy, you've got a pretty colorful background. You've done quite a few things in your life, right? And I know one of the things that you're doing right now is huge, and I want to talk about that. But first, a step back for a second. You've got a background in interior design. In fact, you've got some of your work that's been published in some design magazines back in California. So how did you get into that particular industry, and what were you doing there? And I think you worked in Hollywood too as like a set designer. So you did a lot of stuff, right? So tell us about that whole experience.
Well, I sold real estate in California in the 90s.
Mm,
And, I always enjoyed, I was a buyer's agent. I always enjoyed creating what was possible,
mm,
right? And, oh, this could be so good if we just did this, or we did this. What if you took out this wall? And, it was just always something I desired. And then in 2000, my first husband and I moved to Pasadena. And, I did not like selling real estate down there. I didn't know the area. I didn't feel like I fit in. And I thought, what would I do if I could do anything? I thought, I love interior
mm.
design. And I was right down the street from the Fashion Institute of Los Angeles. So I enrolled and I went back to school.
Wow.
And I got, I took interior design there, and there were some connections there to Hollywood. I could find
Mm,
out how to do things, where do you place ads and how do you find out?
yeah.
And so I worked for a couple of different boutique design
Okay.
studios, which were really, really great experience for me. And one of my last uh, jobs in 2010,
Hmm.
I had a huge remodel project that was published in Spaces magazine in
Very,
Los Angeles. So that was
very
like
cool.
another thing I got to check off my bucket list,
Yeah.
right? So here's right here. See my bucket list right here.
I love
I'm
it.
just checking
I
them
love it.
off.
Keep checking, baby. You're
So
doing
yeah.
great. Keep checking.
And then, yeah, and working in Hollywood, that was on my bucket list. And actually, to have such a late start,
Mm,
because I think I was like 48
mm,
then, it was like, as an art director, set designer, you're schlepping the furniture around, especially just getting into the
right.
industry. It's not like you get to start at the top just because you're more mature or you
Right.
have more experience. You still have to work your way up. So after, I did 3 or 4 movies. I did some, I had a nice body of work that
Hmm.
I was proud of, and I could cross it off and say, like, I feel fulfilled.
I love it. I love it.
I can move
I
on.
love it.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, and then I did construction design.
Okay.
I built some really incredible luxury homes on a golf course in St. George,
Wow.
Ivins, Utah, and
Wow.
yeah, so it's like I got to cross that off the list. And then meanwhile, I was still involved in self-development courses and transformational courses,
Hmm.
and then I kind of transitioned into life coaching.
That's awesome.
So
Pretty
on
full
that.
life you've had so far. You're still pretty young. I mean, you've
Well,
done
thank you.
quite a bit, man. Checking those things off the bucket list. Yeah, I'm still working on my bucket list. It's about this big, and I think I've got about that much checked off so far. So I got a long ways to go. So hopefully I can check off at least a quarter of what you checked off so far. It's pretty awesome. So Wendy, we talked about in the pre-interview process, we talked about, one of the more challenging things and more difficult things you've had to deal with. I know losing your mom was a big deal as well. But the biggest thing I think for you, from what I gleaned from the conversation, was really losing Bill, your late husband, and that was really tragic for you, and it really set you back in a lot of ways, but also propelled you forward. So, shed some light on that, if you would, about what that situation was like for you. Some of the more difficult things that you came across, and how you were able to manage and push through that situation.
Well, I have to tell you a minute about who Bill was.
Okay.
And Bill loved to travel, and he actually became an international businessman because of his love of travel. And
Mm,
he'd traveled the world in his 20s, but
nice.
he was vice president of mergers and acquisitions for AT&T
Oh, wow.
for all of Asia. So he was
Wow.
always traveling, and he loved his career. And then he went in for a tonsillectomy
Hmm.
in 2001, I believe.
Okay.
And
Pretty simple surgery,
the
you think?
surgeon, yeah, outpatient,
Yeah,
right? It
exactly.
was a few days before his birthday. It was like not a big deal,
Right.
right? And he said, I'm going to eat ice cream on my birthday anyway. So,
Exactly.
but he woke up 3 weeks later and found out the surgeon had made a series of mistakes and severed 3 of his carotid arteries, and he had a
What?
massive
Are
stroke.
you
And he
serious?
was permanently disabled. And
And this happened in the United States?
yes, it was in a small Baptist
Wow.
hospital in
Oh
Texas.
my God.
And
So sorry.
yeah, he was married and had 2 young children at the
Mm,
time. And
Man.
that lasted about 5 years until he felt he needed his independence to prove who he could be again, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, you know?
Totally.
He lost the ability to read and write and spell. And he had a spastic arm. And it's so funny because I was with the man 10 years and I would forget that he was disabled
Wow. That's
because of
powerful.
who he was. He was so inspiring. And yeah, I hurt my wrist, last year, and like trying to open a jar with one hand. It's like you just don't even like, how did he do
Right,
that?
right, right.
But he was
Willpower.
just the most positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He was just the most positive person, and he one thing that he could still do was travel, and so his goal was 100 countries.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So that's why we sold everything. We traveled South America. I got to see 7 countries. We had a great time. We came back because of family. And then me wanting to spend time with my mom in her last years. And, Bill kept traveling. He'd come back, I was just like, go,
Wow.
be free.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was working, I was holding down the house. I wanted my roots. I didn't want to do the suitcase thing
Yeah.
again. And so, he took a couple of trips here and there. And then the last one, he, in 2019, he asked if he could do, Africa.
Okay.
And I was in this extremely time intensive advanced leadership training course.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, thank you, honey. That would be wonderful. If you took
Go enjoy yourself, honey. I need the space
oh my
anyway.
God. Yeah. And he loved to talk on the phone. So every time he traveled, wherever he was, we spent 2 hours on the phone, and I would just get to live vicariously through him and the pictures. And, it was just, he was really fulfilled and happy. And I got to be with my family, and, things were, it worked, it just really worked.
Yeah.
And,
so great.
not
to interrupt
in
you,
December,
but I have to say that I think that, the fact that you all saw what each other was passionate about and you respected that, I think that that's something that's missing in a lot of relationships, because people feel like sometimes when you're giving up something that someone else wants to do, that you're losing, but actually you end up getting more back because that person's fulfilled. So now they have their cup's so full. When you are with them, they have so much more to give you now. And it just seems like y'all had that common respect for the things that you valued and what you wanted for yourself, at least at that time, where you needed to be, and you respected and valued where he wanted to be. And that's I think it's incredible. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. We would say, like, how can we have it all?
Hey,
that's the question. It's like, what is it that you want? What is it I want? How can we have it all? And we created it, and we really did have an extraordinary life together.
That's awesome.
And it was, it was something that I think is worth a Hollywood movie if you want to know the truth.
For sure.
Someday.
For sure.
Especially when you hear the ending, right?
Yes. And then things took a turn for the worse at some point, right?
Well, his dad had passed in October of 2018, and he had been kind of, not able to, he spent helping the family, care for his dad as he declined. And he kept having to postpone this trip. And then my mom passed, his dad passed in October. My mom passed in December. And then it was, the plans were fast forward. Okay, he's going to go. I signed up to do this course. And then I lost my job.
Oh.
And he was just like, maybe I shouldn't go. And I was just like, honey, it's cheaper in Africa. You go. I'll figure it out.
Exactly.
I'll figure it out.
I love it.
So, yeah. So anyway, so he had been to Cape Town, and he had worked on a soup kitchen there and sent me lots of pictures. And then he went, I think he did a pit stop at Zimbabwe and Namibia. And then he was in Zambia at Livingston, where the Victoria Falls is. A beautiful town. Just loved the people there. He met a nun there, Sister Maureen.
Okay.
And they became fast friends. And she ran a school for the vulnerables, is what they call them there. And that's like street children and orphans and just kids whose parents can't afford to put them in school. And he was just like, Wendy, what can we do? A teacher makes $80 a month. Actually, it was $60 a month then. $60 a month. He said, we can do so much good.
Wow.
Can we do a fundraiser? Can you do a GoFundMe page? What can we do to help make some money, raise some money?
Right.
So if people knew, they would help.
Right.
And I was just like, I'm like so overwhelmed right now. I'm trying to start a new business and I'm in this course and I'm just like,
Right.
juggling everything. I'm like, yes, I promise I will think of something. And then, he spoke to the teachers. He gave a speech called "Set Big Goals, Make a Difference."
Okay.
And one of the things that he said in the video was, if people don't think you're crazy, then your goals aren't big enough.
Wow.
You need to blow people's hair back, right?
That.
When you tell them your goals and they just go like, wow, you're
There's
crazy.
No
it's
way,
like, okay,
you're crazy.
I'm on track, right?
Yes.
So anyway, well, a week later, he passed away there in Zambia of a stroke caused from a grand mal seizure from the brain injury that he had.
And you weren't even there with it. This happened, and you were still here in the States.
I was here.
Wow.
Yeah, he told me he didn't feel well. He died on his birthday.
Oh man.
So we were all calling him to wish him a happy birthday,
Right.
and the detective answered the phone and said, "I'm sorry to tell you, your husband passed in the night." So completely off guard, completely not expected. And I flew over there and everyone met me like family. He'd been there, I don't know, 3 weeks, I think. And they all loved him so much.
Wow.
And they treated me like family. They knew I had spoken to many of them on the phone because he passed the phone around. He would just say, "Here, meet my wife, Wendy.
Right.
And this is, so-and-so." And, so, I mean, he just tried to include me as much as he could in his adventure,
I love it.
So on the way back, I thought, I have to honor my promise to him to help them and to do something that makes a difference for them.
Yes.
So
yes.
The course that we had taken together, which was our first date, I found out they were having in South Africa. And I called Sister Maureen and I said, you know the course that Bill talked about? And he's like, yeah. I said, would you like to go? I'll raise money. I said, I knew she shouldn't travel alone. South Africa is a very volatile place. So I said, I'll raise money for you and 2 people and I'll send you to this course. And she said, oh, like, okay, all right. And yeah, I definitely want to do that. And so she called me back a week later and she said, there's 11 teachers that want to go.
Wow.
I don't know how to choose. There's 11 people. That
Everybody wants to go. Like,
so everybody wants to go.
Incredible.
So I asked around, I said, does anybody want to help me? Like, I got 11 people who, from Zambia who want to take this course. And everyone's just like, well, we'll help you raise the money. And so it wasn't until October. So this was April.
Okay.
So it ended up costing like about $13,000.
Wow.
And we had miracle after miracle after miracle.
Wow.
That should be a movie too.
Right. Seriously.
Even to the extent, like, I bought the tickets, right? It was a miracle to get the money to buy the tickets at the very last minute, the very last day. They had to be on the plane, bought the tickets. And then they're like, are you going? And I was just like, I didn't raise enough money. And they're just like, why are you giving up? So then I'm looking at their tickets to find out, like, okay, maybe I should be. And I realized we bought one-way tickets.
Ooh.
So I had to raise
another $13,000. Something like that.
Oh my gosh. It was, honestly, the story itself is like almost unbelievable. It would make such a great script. I'm telling you.
Incredible.
But anyway, I ended up there on Sunday night, standing with them, meeting them. And and that was the beginning of Let's Make the Difference.
All right. So Wendy, you sort of pointed to something already. You mentioned the Let's Make the Difference nonprofit that you started. You're the founder and CEO of Let's Make the Difference. And it sounds like, if I'm correct, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this was birthed out of this initiative that you took to have these people in South Africa to go through this training and development course that you were so lit up about. So tell us about Let's Make the Difference. What's it about? Why did you start it? What's the purpose, and who are you out to help, and who are you out to cause with this nonprofit?
Well, when Bill and I had traveled around South America, we always saw small um, town
Mm-hmm.
nonprofits. People like compassionate and passionate about doing something in their community. And
Mm-hmm.
we always thought, what if we could be a megaphone and a spotlight
Mm-hmm.
and just tell people in the United States what these people are accomplishing and how, you know, our money goes so far we could help them.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know anything about running a business, and it was kind of like overwhelming to think about. I bought the domain names
Mm-hmm.
back in 2010 or something,
Okay.
and I always had the intention, like, someday, we're going to do something with this. And when I was flying home, and I thought, I have got to honor my word to Bill. And it was like, first, before I send money over there, I want to have a foundation for them that they could see what's possible and to have like integrity, like a conversation about like giving your word. So it was really important to me that we have that basic communication straight
Mm-hmm.
before I start sending money.
Yeah, of course.
So that's how it all started. And but that isn't the only thing. Like, what we want to do is provide economic opportunities, right? We want to actually impact their ability to make money, and what's
Hmm.
missing for them is technology.
Hmm.
I mean, only 18% of the population of Zambia has access to technology and computers.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, first we get this foundation of integrity and being able to create ideas and concepts together,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can look for ways that we can connect them to the global economy so that they can have digital services so that they
Right.
can actually participate and
Yes.
have opportunities that they don't have in their local economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm not going over there to help them sell their baskets that they're
Right.
weaving. Although that's a craft, and I don't want to
Yeah.
diminish that in any way. But there's so many people
Right.
hungry for, like, teach me. I just want the opportunity to learn,
I
and they
mean,
just don't have access.
if you could help them sell those baskets online, right, connecting to the internet, get them some computers, then you're all about selling baskets. You can sell 200 as opposed to two baskets, right? So
Exactly.
that's building
Yeah.
economy. I love
And
it.
everybody's life is better, right?
Yes.
Everybody's life is improved.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a great initiative, and I'm sure Bill is looking down on you, and he's very proud of what you've been able to do, and that you've been able to carry that torch forward and give back. So I know one of the things that you told me, Wendy, that was surprising for you is when you started spending time over there, is you go to these refugee camps, right? And your idea, and even my idea, I was surprised when you shared this with me. You know what we think of and what we interpret as a refugee camp or refugees in general. Make the distinction for the audience of what you saw that was very different than what you thought would be called a refugee camp.
Well, actually, I haven't been to a refugee camp. That
Okay.
came after. Um, I've been to Cape Town and I've been to Zambia,
Okay.
and then everything's been on Zoom. But
Got
it's
it.
like one thing leads to another, and people tell people, and people know people here and
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And we met somebody in. We were looking for um, computer and internet, right? We're looking for a place for people to go to take educational courses to
Mm-hmm.
improve them for personal development and for sustainability and for economic opportunities. And we happened to meet someone in the Kakuma refugee camp,
Okay.
and his name is Honore Abengo, and he's a very dear friend. And I know Bill would have loved him, but he has a nonprofit there,
Okay.
and he has a computer. He already has a community computer center, and he teaches different classes on
Okay.
conflict resolution and things like that.
Nice.
So, what blew my mind, to answer your question, was like, I had always, you hear things and you
Mm-hmm.
watch things on the news and you see people running,
Yes.
fleeing their countries, and you just think, a refugee. And like, in my mind, I had no concept. I had no concept. And sad to admit, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I kind of equated it with like homeless people
Yeah.
here that had a
So
choice
did
or
I.
that might have a choice, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, not to say anything, derogatory about that, because some people don't.
Hmm.
And there definitely is a need for help there too. But it's like the refugees that we have been introduced to, and Let's Make the Difference, are educated, intelligent, brilliant, ambitious, and they've just fallen into circumstances where they had to flee for their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, they all have a different story. And some of them have stories of abuse from the time they were small children.
Mm.
Culturally, like what's acceptable there would
Right.
not be acceptable here. That's something else we can change, right? That's something we can transform with education. And matter of fact, one of them uh, uh, actually was horribly abused as a child, and actually reached out to his uncle after this course and made amends. And he's like, I think I can make a difference in my family so that this doesn't
Wow.
continue from generation to generation.
Yeah.
But we've had, I think, 187 people go through 5 different courses,
Outstanding.
and different things. 23 of those are women that went through a
Awesome.
course offered by the University of Zambia and the Alt Foundation, another nonprofit that we partner with.
Okay.
And we sponsor them not just for the tuition, but we have to pay for internet for them. And sometimes
Mm.
we have to, find laptops for them or something. A lot of times they're on their phone. They're doing
Right.
a college course on their phone.
Wow. I tell
But
you what,
it's
man.
so
Here in the United States, we're spoiled rotten, right? I mean, in the first world, as they called it. I mean, we have so many things that we take for granted. Kids with cell phones at 8 years old, with the power of a computer in their hands, and these people are having to do a college course on a phone. Unbelievable. And
yeah,
what they can still get accomplished in that with those conditions, right? It's pretty amazing.
that's what's inspiring. And they're amazing human beings, and no one that has volunteered. I mean, we've probably had about 60 volunteers come through
Hmm.
and help us with contacting people and getting them registered and
Hmm.
setting them up and preparing for the courses and taking them through the courses and everything.
Right.
The people here will never be the same.
Wow.
That's what they've told me.
I love
This
it.
is like, we think we're making a difference for them. Like, I'll never be the same.
I love it.
That's the kind of impact they have. They're so grateful, and they're so like humble, and like they just want any opportunity.
Yeah. I
There's
love it.
no one else cares about us. That's what they said. No one else cares about us.
Man.
But
Yeah.
here's one
Sorry, go
more
ahead.
thing:
Yeah, go ahead.
the internet costs. The internet costs for a refugee in Kenya is $10 a day.
$10 a day?
Yeah, so $300 a month is what it would be. And their
Wow.
government stipend, if they don't have a job within the camp, because they
Hmm.
can't work outside the camp, but there's little businesses inside the camp.
Okay.
If they don't have a job, the government gives them $14 a month to live on. So
Wow.
we get a lot of people who haven't talked to their family in months.
So you're talking about it's $10 a day per person for internet service,
Yes.
and they get paid
For
$14 a
one cell
day.
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14. So
So
that's
when we
140
do the
bucks. There's no way you can afford it on 140 bucks. No, that's 14 times 30, whatever that math comes out to be. Is not enough for $30 for.
It's like
I mean,
50,
it's
it's not
barely.
even 50 cents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
barely enough. Yeah.
So when they do our courses, we feed them because we found out some of them only eat every other day.
Mm.
I was kind of like doing the budgets. Like, why do we have to feed them? Why can't they just bring food?
Wow.
And they said a lot of them don't eat every day.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
$3 allotted per person for food. We'll pay for their food. And then $10 a day for internet. So now this is our next big project. Our push is to get satellites. We want Elon Musk's satellites there. So the projection is spring of next year
Okay.
before they're available in Africa, in parts of Africa.
Man.
But, so we're doing a big fundraising drive for that to raise that money. They're about $1,500 each, and then $100 a month.
Wow.
And we could have a classroom of people at that for the whole month. instead of $40 for one person for 4 days.
Really great. Really great. I mean, outstanding work. Outstanding work. And I want to make sure we get your information at the end of this podcast, so we can actually have people who want to support you and what you're doing and support the Let's Make the Difference nonprofit, that they can actually do that for you. Because I know that there are a lot of great people out there that are watching this podcast that would love to have, may not have the time and the energy to do it, but they may have the resources and the funding that they can maybe, hey, here's $20, $15 that I can contribute. And I know that'll buy at least one day of internet, right? So that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And monthly, even if, 100 people give $10 a month.
There you go. Exactly. Well, Wendy, I just want to acknowledge you for all the great work that you're doing over in South Africa and other parts of the world, the people that you're impacting, your commitment to obviously helping humanity to rise and be the best they can possibly be. So, as you know, the Everything Matters podcast, we focus on conversations that propel performance, right? So I'd be remiss if I let you get away from here and not ask you about performance. So in the spirit and the world of performance, right, when you think about what it takes to be a high performer, and you're high performing right now because you're managing multiple things, even all the way across the globe, right? So what would you say is one of the key components of being a high performer and being a high performer on a consistent basis? What would you say to that?
I think the latest revelation I've had, if you want to call it a revelation, is that perfection is a rival of completion.
Perfection is a rival, of completion. Say more about that.
Well, it's just that what stops you from finishing something is that it has to be perfect. And people will stop and start and stop, or they'll start and then stop, because it isn't as good as they want it to be. And it's not perfect. And it's not, and I myself, I've been under this thing, it's not how I want it to be. It's not perfect. It's not this and it's not that. And it's just kind of sometimes you just have to blow through it and get it done, cross the finish line, and then you can edit, right? Then you can kind of figure it out, then you can kind of go, okay, next time I'll do it this way, or but I think just the whole perfection. And when I thought, it's almost a rival, here's completion out here, and then here's perfection, just holding you back. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in the last few years is it's not going to be perfect. It just isn't. And we can edit later.
We can edit later. Exactly. Right. At least if you have something complete, you can look and see what you can edit. But if you never complete it, how can you go back and actually evaluate what you did? Right. And that's so beautiful that you say that, because that's kind of how it was this podcast. I didn't do this podcast for a while because I wanted it to be a certain way. And I wanted it to look a certain way. I wanted it to feel a certain way. I wanted to pay someone to do all this other stuff for me to make it perfect, like Joe Rogan's show, right? My show doesn't have to be like Joe Rogan's show. It can still be as powerful and impactful and effective as his show in the small platform that it is, right? It's about the people that listen to it and the people that actually are touched by it. That's what really matters. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's beautiful. We'll have to share that quote at the end of the podcast. Really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So Wendy, one of the other things that we do on the Everything Matters podcast is we give people value, right? We just gave some coaching on performance, a couple of gold nuggets that we dropped. The next thing that I like to offer on the podcast is maybe some advice, right? Maybe a way of looking at things that you hadn't looked at before. So when you think about that, in the spirit of nonprofits in particular, right? I know a lot of people that have huge hearts, right? And it's about taking that first action first, right? And then continuing to stay in action around whatever it is that you're committed to, right? So in starting a nonprofit, though, I know there's a lot of red tape, a lot of things go into starting a nonprofit. So what advice would you give someone who's thought about starting a nonprofit, would like to maybe start one, about how do you get that going?
Well, I think the first advice I'd have, depending on what their motivation is or what their passion is, is if they can start out by working with someone else who has a nonprofit, working within the nonprofit sector so that you get a feel for it. I didn't have that advantage. I wish I had, right? Because it would have, there's a lot that I could have learned. And I'm kind of at the point now where I'm midway. I feel like I'm at a place where I can start sharing some knowledge and mentoring people. Right. And then I need mentors to get to the next level. Right.
Absolutely.
So we're actually creating a networking group called the International Network of Nonprofits.
Oh,
and the goal of it is to share these stories and mentor each other. It's educational. There'll be, speakers that can come and business plan ideas. We have somebody who we work with for business plans, and actually the micro lending thing, we're doing that, and so she's helping so that we can help people with their business plan. And coaching around funding and advertising and fundraising, just getting my feet wet with that and finding out there's grants available. There's grant writers, companies that can help. And so all these connections that are really important to get started, and just having someone to say, yeah, you're heading in a good, that's the way to do it. Right. Or like, maybe do this first. I think the best advice, I've come to the conclusion, I wish, my website crashed a year and a half ago, and I just was too busy making things happen to fix it. First thing I would say is you got to have a website, right? Right. But it's sure. but do as I say, not as I do. Right. So now my website's now under construction and getting refined and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of value from each other that we can share. And that's let's make the difference as a spotlight and a megaphone. So if somebody's got a passion, we want to partner with them, so that we can, if they're in alignment with our vision, let's do it together. Yeah, I love that. It doesn't have to be a journey alone. Absolutely. Really great. Thanks, Wendy. All right, Wendy, one of the other things that we talk about on the podcast is failure, right? And one of the things I was moved by that you shared in our pre-interview conversation was that you said you must fail on your way to success. So I'd love to get your perspective, your view on what that means. I've heard something like that before. What do you mean when you say that? Well, you can't make progress unless you try. And you can't always succeed 100% the first time you're out the door, right? You have to practice. And for instance, a baby, do we think that they're failures when they fall, when they're learning to walk? No, just learning to walk, yeah. That's how you do it. You have to fall in order to learn to walk. But we get all in our head about it, and we think that somehow, we shouldn't. Yeah. We shouldn't fail. And it's if I fall, it might hurt though. I might get hurt if I fall. What if I scrape my knee? What if people talk about me? What if they laugh at me, Wendy, if I failed? I don't want to feel that. and that's the conversation, right? It is. And all there is to do is to take the next step. Yeah. To take the next step. And I have, I've definitely failed many times in many areas, and just keep plugging along and taking the next step, because it's that doesn't define me. Who I am is my commitments. It's what I'm committed to. That's what drives me. I like it. And love that. So, yeah. So that's kind of it's just take the next step. Take the next step in the direction that you're headed in. And I think sometimes people struggle with not knowing what the next step is. And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? Just take the step. The only way you're going to know if it's the right step or the wrong step is just take it. And then you come back and edit it later. Okay, that wasn't the right one. let me try the next one. Or maybe get a mentor and somebody can guide me and say, hey, here's the next step you should take. And I know that keeps people paralyzed in a lot of situations, because they feel like what if I take the wrong step? What if it's not right and it costs me $1,000 or it costs me $500? That's the price of growth, right? It's the price of success. You're going to make those failures. You want to minimize those, obviously, but it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So I think that's really powerful. Yeah, if you think about it, there probably isn't a billionaire alive that hasn't failed a million times. Right? Absolutely. Or a billion times, right? Right. All right, Wendy, thank you so much. It's been a really, really incredible interview. It's been great being with you. Last thing I want to ask you is, so with all the work that you're doing, right, and you're obviously up to really amazing things in the world, what do you want people to say about you when all the dust settles? What do you want people to think? What mark do you want to leave on this planet? I think I want people to say Wendy Huffman saw greatness in everyone. And then they transformed their continent because of it. Wow. We gave them the tools. We gave them the tools they needed. We taught them to fish.
Partnership and teamwork is what I'm hearing. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Wendy, again, been great being with you. If people want to learn more about Let's Make the Difference, if they want to maybe contribute in some way, how would they find out more and how would they go about doing that?
Well, our website is letsmakethedifference.org. Also, there's a PayPal link. It's paypal.me/LMTD, which is Let's Make the Difference
Got it.
2020.
Love it.
And those are easy ways.
Excellent.
You can always reach out to us on Facebook too.
Facebook is definitely a great way to get connected, right? Outstanding. Well, Wendy, I'm definitely going to be sending my, I think I've actually already made a donation. I'll be making another one here to the cause that you're up to, because I totally believe in what you're doing and I support you 100%. So again, thank you so much for being here on the Everything Matters podcast, where we have conversations that propel performance. And I know for sure what you shared today will propel someone forward to making the kind of results that they didn't think they could do just by listening to your voice. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. This is Doris Brown's baby boy. We out.